Hello. Welcome to another cruiser inspection in World of Warships. And we are looking at the Alaska. I figured we would look at some of the Black Friday ships, kind of the ones that, I guess I would recommend getting. Uh, so we're going to start with Alaska. Too long didn't watch. Alaska, tier for tier, is one of the most overpowered ships in the entire game. It still is. It really still is one of the most OP ships in the game at its tier. This ship is an unequivocal tier 10. It just is. You could put this thing into tier 10, and basically people would, I think, view it as a Puerto Rico side grade. If you just slapped this exact ship into tier 10 and gave it the same H pool as Puerto Rico, people would probably go, yeah, why would I play Puerto Rico? So why is that? Well, number one, kind of the only issue with your armor compared to Puerto Rico is you cannot bounce 406s on your upper belt. You can kind of see here the division on your lower casemate and your upper casemate. This upper belt here is 28, so you do get overmatched by all battleships with 406s. But in return, and you also have one turret less and about 10k less HP than a Puerto Rico, right? Okay. Those are downsides, right? That's definitely lowering your survivability. But here's the thing. Well, though Alaska gets battle cruiser dispersion with 2.05 sigma, and the Puerto Rico gets battleship dispersion with 2.2 sigma. And this is leading you to basically having a Puerto Rico level salvo, and that is an Alaska moment right there. This thing is very good against fighting destroyers with its radar. Very good at pushing in on DDs, the Hydra and the radar, the decent guns, the good reload. Very good at farming battleships. The HE is actually kind of demonic. But the Alaska's one true specialty is massacring cruisers. Because like Puerto Rico, you have the same penetration angles as the Des Moines, but with 305s. And because they're slower shells, they're less likely to overpen, which is actually an asset. Yes, they are harder to lead targets at long range. So compared to Puerto Rico, yes, you only have 9 shells versus 12, but you have a 2-second better reload, and you have about 15 to 20% better dispersion at most ranges than Puerto Rico, which to me is almost completely nullifying Puerto Rico's extra turret advantage. Basically, here's a very good example of this ship. Alaska versus Puerto Rico guns is very similar to the experience you will feel when you play Montana versus Wisconsin. When you go from Montana to Wisconsin, do you feel like your guns got worse because you lost a turret? I mean, I would argue if you can aim, the answer is no, and that's kind of my exact thoughts on the Alaska versus Puerto Rico guns. Is yes, you give up a turret, but because you're so much more accurate with slightly worse sigma, you're just hitting like kind of the same amount of shells. Like I would really argue that Alaska just has better guns than Puerto Rico. It just because of the dispersion. I mean, you're so much more likely to like double and triple sick cruisers. Puerto Rico, if you've played it a lot, it's kind of infamous as like the one citadel machine, right? Where it's like you shotgun somebody, you get like 3 pens in a citadel. Alaska is just way more likely to get multiple sits because you're more likely to have more shells right where you're aiming because of the better vertical dispersion. So I would kind of just say flat out, salvo for salvo, Alaska's at least as good as Puerto Rico, if not better. But then you also have a 2-second better reload, and then of course, if you are pushing into radar, what are you probably doing in an Alaska or a Puerto Rico? Well, you're quite possibly only shooting your front 2 guns. And if you're only shooting your front 2 guns, Alaska is probably 30-40% better than Puerto Rico, right? Also, how about getting to use that radar? Well, Alaska has better concealment, right? You have 12.2 kilometer concealment. It's way easier to make use of your radar on destroyers compared to Puerto Rico with its 13-kilometer concealment. Also, the Alaska is a noticeably smaller target, a very noticeably smaller target. Overall, I'd say it's probably a solid 20% smaller than the Puerto Rico. They're basically the same speed. Puerto Rico's half a knot faster, but Alaska has noticeably better handling, better turning circle, better rudder shift, even slightly better acceleration. The full package on Alaska, to me, even factoring in this slightly worse upper belt that doesn't let you bounce 406s, the 10k less HP. I just think it's like basically a better ship than Puerto Rico, and it's a tier lower. Like, and I don't even want to caveat this by saying tier for tier Alaska is a better ship. I think it just kind of is a better ship than the Puerto Rico, which is a tier 10. This is probably... I don't think this is a hot take that this is the best tier 9 cruiser in the game. I feel like that's probably not even really a hot take. I'm trying to think what you would even put in the running to compete with this thing. The Riga is quite good. The Riga is a very solid ship, but the Alaska just has like way better guns, slightly worse hull, of course, but way better guns than something like Riga. These guns are just so good, and you know, rightfully so. People talk a lot about the AP on Alaska, Puerto Rico, right? Because it's basically Des Moines AP with like nearly battleship guns, but the HE on this ship is disgusting. 4,300 HE damage. 4,300 HE damage. You want to know something a little silly and goofy? What do you think the GK, a tier 10 battleship with 406mm guns, what do you think the damage of those shells is? Yeah, it's 4,800, right? It's 500 damage more than a tier 9 cruiser with 305s. The Puerto Rico is an exceptionally good HE spammer. I think you'll probably see this in these two replays. As always, we're looking at back-to-back replays, and yeah, we basically were able to record this review in the very first two games. Now, what I also liked about the luck of these first two games is we're not top tier, right? So both of these replays, you are going to see, you know, how the Alaska performs in a lobby with tier 10s. I mean, this is like nightmare fuel for an Alaska because we have super high DPM cruisers, we have a tanky cruiser, we have battleships, tier 10 destroyers, tier 10 sub, we even have super ship in the Patry. You know, nice little double fire salvo on the Thunder. I mean, honest to God, like, unless you're shooting perfectly flat battleships or cruisers, I would say like a solid half of my volleys in the Alaska are going to be HE. Because, I mean, you know, we've got this like 15-second reload now with some adrenaline rush kicking in, and getting 5 to 6K and kind of a guaranteed fire every 15 seconds. So, no joke. You definitely don't want to sleep on the Alaska HE. It's because of the improved dispersion it has over a lot of these other super heavy cruisers. I mean, it's really good. I mean, you see the kind of fire starting that we're getting on these battleships. It's really strong, and you know, of course, because you're fighting against tier 10s, a big way to kind of go through their HP pool, like something like a Patry, right? It's like there's probably no way I'm really killing that thing with AP, right? I'm gonna have to hit him for like what 15 plus good AP salvos to burn through like 2 heals and kill him in a 1v1, right? Like, probably not gonna fucking happen. So a lot of the time you're probably better off just slinging the HE, because it's just really good. You have amazing AP and amazing HE in the Alaska. I would flat out say that the HE on this thing is like way overtuned. You know, personal opinion on that. I mean, you have other ships in this tier, right? Like, theoretically, like, you think of the other ships that the Alaska is competing against in tier 9. It's like kind of a very logical competitor to the Alaska is probably the Aegir, right? Because they, unlike things like maybe Azuma, right? Azuma is like kind of a AFK kiter in spawn. Alaska and Aegir are kind of more like the pushing ships, right? Theoretically kind of AP focused. Like, this HE just does like significantly more damage than it does, like, I don't know, 600-700 more damage than a Gear HE. Yeah, I mean, truly, like, really Alaska's status as an overpowered beast in tier 9 is really apparent when you compare it to the other tier 9 competitors like Azuma, and Aegir and Carnot. It's like it blows all of those ships out of the water. Like, there's just really almost no competition for what the best of those ships are in that type. So we did pretty good damage to the Patry, but like realistically, my nose is 27, he overmatches that, right? My upper belt is 28, he overmatches that. So like the guy doesn't really even have to aim. As you saw, you're still in a cruiser hull, right? I mean, Puerto Rico would suffer a very actually no, Puerto Rico would suffer about the same because it has that 30 mil upper belt, I believe. So against Patri, the Alaska, and that's the thing, this lower survivability via the upper belt on Alaska compared to Puerto Rico is kind of only mattering against specifically ships with 406 millimeter guns. Things with 30 overmatch and up, they just shit on Puerto Rico as hard as they shit on Alaska. And then if ships have 380s, then they don't shit on either of you, right? We had two good DDs, which is a big reason we won the game. But the kind of damage, like the fire starting, right? We didn't get a ton of fire damage, but I mean, still 31k, right? 31,000 damage. And then you see the kind of damage just the HE did. Like, we averaged almost 1,000 damage per shell hit with HE. And yeah, we all averaged almost 2,000 with AP. But I mean, you factor in the amount of shells hit, and it's like, our HE accounted for, about 80,000 damage. AP accounted for about 80,000 damage. And I say that's pretty typical. In my experience playing Alaska, typically HE plus fires and your AP damage usually is going to be a very comparable amount of damage per game. Actually, in this game, the AP damage is quite inflated by this guy that don't worry, I've got his royalty check in the mail for his acting job that game. But we really griefed the Thunderer. I think we started 4 or 5 fires on this guy in like 4 salvos maybe. This guy really, really suffered. And then, like, even getting crushed, right? We got crushed by the Patri. We can see here damage received. The Patri just shit 55k overmatch into us. But, I mean, we gave it back equally as good, right? Which is kind of, kind of something worth noticing. The Alaska is not, like, tanky in the way that a Petra is, right? You don't have the icebreaker. You don't have the high plating deck and side plating. But it's definitely, like, probably tankier than almost every cruiser at tier 9. Probably Riga would be the one standout. Riga is noticeably, I would say, like the tankiest tier 9 cruiser, certainly in the tech tree. But, Riga, Kronstadt, I suppose. Kronstadt. This is way better than Kronstadt, too, this ship. I think the Alaska is kind of like objectively, really, probably the best ship tier for tier in the whole Black Friday event. You can make a strong case. And as we can see in game 2 of the day, did it get any better? Did the matchmaker get any better? Jesus Christ, right? DDs and cruisers are all tier 10s. In fact, I am the only tier 9 cruiser in the entire lobby. Wargaming tacitly admitting that Alaska is straight up a tier 10, basically. And then the matchmaker did a funny thing where we got 2 DDs and 1 less battleship, right? So they have 3 tier 9 battleships. Super BB, 2 tier 10 BBs, 5 tier 10 cruisers, tier 10 DDs. So both of these games, strong case to be made that this is like really, really bad matchmaking, right? I was tempted when doing this review commentary recording, I was tempted to keep playing more games in Alaska and do like an out of order game, maybe show like an Alaska versus tier 7 because it's fucking hilarious. The ship against tier 7s is like, what, my god, man, this thing against tier 7s is, I don't even know, like main against tier 9s, is that it's close to like playing main into tier 9 cruisers, right? But it doesn't really matter, like you don't, and this is something that is very, perhaps not totally unique in the Alaska, but I would argue probably in the Black, of all the ships in the Black Friday event, it's hard to think of one that doesn't care as much about being bottom tier as Alaska. Because the guns are still so potent, right? I mean, something like a G-Nan, it's like, if I properly aim and lead on this guy, like, I can still just one-shot blow him up, right? I mean, the Zhao, Wooster, Henry, G-Nan, like, these guys are all theoretically white bar targets for an Alaska, right? The guns are just so consistent. Like, again, I'm going to say it again. I would basically rather have Alaska guns against broadside cruisers than Puerto Rico guns. Now, in that situation, because I misaimed, maybe Puerto Rico's bad dispersion would have given me a lucky citadel, right? But Alaska is like, against a target like G9 as well, is kind of uniquely toxic, right? Because you not only have this really good dispersion with these slower shells that are less likely to overpen. I don't know about that one. I felt like I aimed that one high enough, but whatever. Bad aim again, I suppose. Um, Alaska, like Puerto Rico, has a bit of that armor too, where you kind of almost never get punished when you go flat unless you're actively turning. Particularly turning in is a big no-no in the Alaska. If you are a broadside while turning towards people, that is when you like go from having one of the trolliest citadels in the game to being like a free blow you the fuck up death strike, right? You definitely like never. It's okay to go flat to people in this thing. You probably only lose like 20k, but absolutely you never go flat while turning, particularly turning towards people, turning in on people. And you might have noticed that both games I'm kind of starting the same way, which is I'm trying to take a position near 1 or 2 caps. Last game 2 caps, this game 1 cap. I'm trying to take a position near caps, but not a super aggressive position. And, that is because, like all these other, super heavy large cruisers, whatever you want to call them, you're taking 60-second fires base in the Alaska, right? And, you don't have any, like, super improved healing, right? You have good healing. 4 of these heals is going to give me about 44,000 HP remaining. 40, HP back. So, but you don't want to take fires because realistically, like one fire in the Alaska is almost going to eat up an entire heal, right? So you like really, really, really want to avoid taking fires. But you see here the damage, like we're getting about 6k per salvo. Our first salvo started a fire like 100%. I mean, unless battleships are going flat to you, it's always HE at superstructures to me in the Alaska. Um, it's like it's too good to not spam at people. The accuracy is good enough where you kind of average like I would say 6, 7 shells even on a bow and battleship at this kind of range. And with a 27% fire chance, you're like not quite guaranteed a fire with 6 or 7 shell hits, but it's very, very likely you will get one, right? But like there you go. That was the first salvo I hit this guy after his DCP was down, and it's another fire, right? So realistically, we got a fire on both salvos on that GK, because not counting the one where his DCP was down, of course. And like I said during the first replay, when you push in on destroyers, you're definitely better than Puerto Rico because front gun only Alaska is like so immeasurably better than front gun only Puerto Rico. And there's just so many times in this ship or Puerto Rico you're going to be shooting guns bow in. I mean, see, like 8 out of 9, like, I mean, like I said, if you play Wisconsin, like the ship has almost identical dispersion to Wisconsin, right? Because yeah, you both have battle cruiser dispersion, and then you have 2.05 sigma. Wisconsin has 2.0 sigma, but you theoretically have barely worse dispersion than Wisconsin, right? Because you can't take the American battleship accuracy mod, right? So, um, you know, the kind of shell counts you hit in Wisconsin, you kind of hit in something like the Puerto Rico or the Alaska. Um, so we're kind of playing, we notice we're playing a bit passive because really we don't want the GNAN to get farm on us over that island. But now is a really good time to push because the Gearing had just sent us out of torps. Amazing gap that I mean, that dispersion was incredible. And now, there's not really any crossfire on me, right? Pommern, I'm bow in, I'm fine. GNAN doesn't have access to me. We'll probably maybe tank one Puerto Rico salvo. He could 15k us. But I do want to, like, start pushing up because, unfortunately, my Salem killed himself. And now that my Salem killed himself, I'm the only vision, right? I'm the only one ship with radar, so I don't want to just, like, let this GNAN perma-farm my team. So I want to, hop to the next island if I can. But I'm going to be kind of, like, looking to, at least somewhat isolate, right? Like, I don't want to be bowing here, because if I'm bowing here, then GNAN can farm me, Pommern can farm me, Puerto Rico can pop out and farm me, and then I don't know what these ships are doing, right? If you see on the mini-map, they were last spotted less than a minute ago, all of them. So it's like, these guys, for all I know, there could be 3 ships right here, right? So if I were to go bow in here, there is a very non-zero chance that, like, my ship is dead in 2 minutes, right? So if I go over here, then I can isolate. It's just the Pommern and maybe the GNAN that can shoot me, but the Nice. I nuked the island. Pretty cool. So you see here the Gene immediately opens up on me, so now I immediately have to duck back because I can't afford to shoot at these guys and let this guy just spot me through the smoke fire penalty that I have, which we can talk about. That's actually quite good. You have just over a 12-kilometer smoke fire penalty in the Alaska, which you are going to see demonstrated throughout the second half of this replay quite nicely. If you got an ally that smokes you up in this thing, it's quite effective at spamming from smoke, because smoke fire penalty is maybe like 12-3. It's pretty good, right? It's not, you know, as close as your radar range, but it's quite good. Like, this Puerto Rico is about to be far enough away. That's why you see me just backing up here like a bot. And look at this, dude. Look at this. Got Tito Peligroso in the fucking Shima, smoking a brother up. Holy shit, you love to fucking see it. And see, yep, here you go. He's 12-7. We're not spotted. So I can just park in this smoke. I'm safe to Gina and Torps, right? Like, there's a Zhao. He's too far to torp me. And also HE spam on Puerto Rico, right? He can't run fire prevention. If you noticed earlier, this Palmer wasn't even running fire prevention. So I'm kind of be able to farm like a kind of mad amount of damage from this position. And this guy's also like beached, which is quite interesting. But you know, having a teammate, it's just crazy, dude. It's just crazy. Like, this guy dropping that one smoke for me basically means that these guys have to keep running away, because, you know, now there's a smoked up Alaska HE spamming them. They're not going to live that, right? But I do want to kind of like keep an eye out for the Gnan. This game, by the way, the points are reversed, so we are 300 points up. Just pointing that out. But, you know, we're at 5 fires. Like, I think we're going to see at the end of this game, we'll look at the HE and fires versus AP damage, and it's, like, pretty good. You know, this is, like, I mention this all the time in the battleship reviews I do, how there's almost no battleships where you really ever want to be an AP purist. Probably really the only ones are, like, you know, Satsuma, Yamato, you know, ships with 460s plus that overmatch every ship, you know, in parts, right? Maybe those you maybe become an AP purist, but certainly in something like Alaska, this HE is, like, way too good. It is way too good to not spam at people. Here his Wooster is just tempting me. He's just, oh, he's so tantalizing. But, you know, I do need to pop out here. The Gnan's trying to run. Our Gearing is doing a good job of spotting. Both games, I have to say, both games, despite being, you know, shit matchmaker where I'm bottom tier, I gotta say, I did in both of the games today get, like, well above average destroyer players. And you see the kind of angle we sit at all that guy at, like, yeah, you know, Des Moines pen angles on battlecruiser dispersion with 2.05 Sigma. Is it too much? Is it too much? I don't know. Yes, the answer is it is definitely too much. And then, you know, again, boom, double sit, right? Where, like we can sit this guy. That's not going through his nose and hitting the front of his citadel, right? That is just like a straight up, you know, he's 35 degrees and he's just catching citadels, right? And then I think I aimed that one a bit too far forward because he was slowing down. But you see the second that this Wooster starts spamming me, I'm going to duck behind the island. And good HE spammers with good fire starting, that is the Alaska no-go. That is the, you will die to that thing so fast. Like, a Des Moines 1v1 against an Alaska, like, that Des Moines will kill you and still be on well over half HP. Like, you do not stand a chance against... The only cruisers that are good HE spammers that you have a chance against would be something like the Jinan, the Colbert, the Austin, you know, or like a Minotaur, right? Like these ships where you overmatch them everywhere, the ultralight cruisers, you know, that we call. And it's really weird how little damage. Look at my perfect aim and then my AP, because I definitely didn't accidentally load HE. Weird. Why did my AP not Citadel him? That I definitely still had loaded. Yeah, I don't know. Another Citadel, pretty cool. Look at this guy, dude. He's smoking me again. Like, what is this? What is this teammate? Bro, can I suck his dick through the screen? Like, dude, what? Wow. But this is an AP moment, right? Broadside battle. Like I said, any battleships that are broadside, 100% use the AP because you're going to average like 8 to 15k depending on how many pens you get, right? So, but the second he's angled, like, yeah, he's only at maybe 30 degrees when these hit. I could maybe risk a really juicy AP volley, but like, there's just no reason to when every other HE salvo I'm going to get a fire anyway, right? Um, yeah, I could have probably done like 8k instead of 4k if I had shot AP at that salvo with that salvo, right? This guy's blind firing me. He's just mad. Um, and I'm kind of under leading as well, right? But there you go. So that's 8 shell hits to get a fire, right? And that's what I mean. If like I had aimed that first salvo a bit better, very likely we could have just got an insta-light. And I want you to pay attention to this salvo. Why do I run premium cold DCP on every battleship? Well, this right here would be why. Those salvos came 16.1 seconds apart, and his DCP was down because he doesn't have any improvement to his DCP duration. Yeah. Cold DCP mod, fellas, on your BBs. It's pretty fucking nice. It's pretty fucking nice. I would be running that shit on basically everything. So this game is basically over. Huge props to both my DDs really on this flank. The gearing was a spotting pig, and then the Shima was a smoke bot pig. And yeah, I mean, if you've noticed, I've barely moved, right? I think I started over here. I pushed into this rock with like 80,000 damage to my name, Witherer in Alaska. You get actually like not that few Witherers in this thing. It's just such a good HE spammer. And then we moved up to one island. So I've basically played in like this 2-3 grid square zone all game. And I've been able to bot out. I've been able to utilize all of my gun power for most of this game. And that is like 100% down to these, this DD smoking me up. Like I'm just camping in smoke. These guys, there's nothing they can do, right? I mean, like what can they do? They can push in and die to torps, or they can run away while I HE farm them, right? But this is the Alaska experience. Like I'm telling you, man, this might be one of the most. This might be the only. It's the only tier 9 cruiser I play anymore. Yeah, I like straight up. I'm not really, I think I've mentioned I pretty much only play tier 10. But like, if I am going to play a tier lower than tier 10, I am not playing a cruiser. They're just straight up like playing tier 9 cruisers and being bottom tier is the most suffering experience in the entire game, unless it's the fucking Alaska. Alaska is just so good. It's flat out overpowered. You could take this ship, and if the Puerto Rico didn't exist, right? Because if you slap this into tier 10, people would be like, it doesn't have enough health. But I mean, this ship, dude, it's a tier 10. And I don't think you can really say that of these other Black Friday ships. We'll look at a few more. We'll look at Jean Bart. I think Jean Bart is a good tier 9, but Jean Bart is not even kind of a tier 10, right? I mean, like, the Bourgogne is a solid tier 10. The Bourgogne is 30-40% better than the Jean Bart, right? Something like Cossack is overpowered, right, for its tier. But, like, Cossack is... maybe like a tier 8.5. You could argue like Cossack also doesn't really care about being up tiered, to be fair. But I don't think it's like it's not like an objective tier 9, right? Because you play Cossack into tier 9, and like good players in gunboats will take a dump on you, right? But like the Alaska, there's so few ships even in tier 10 that are going to take a dump on you. Like imagine like fighting this Zhao, right? If he wants to shoot all of his guns at me, I can Citadel him. It's G-Nan, like you overmatch him everywhere, right? I mean, because of these improved pen angles, and that's like the biggest thing with the Alaska compared to something like the Aegir, dude, is like I feel like all you'd really have to do, and I don't even hate the Aegir. I think it's an okay ship, right? But like the difference in having these ricochet angles that are 22 to 30 degrees instead of your standard 30 to like you have to understand that like Alaska guarantees penetrates you at an angle where normal cruisers start to have a chance to penetrate you, right? So you go 25 degrees to Alaska and you can blow the fuck up in your cruiser, right? And that's kind of like even cruiser with good firing angles, most of them have to show at least 25 degrees. So there's like very, very few cruisers in the game, particularly at tiers like 7, 8, and 9, that can just even shoot their guns at Alaska and not risk blowing the fuck up. And to me, like that's part of why it's so overpowered. But like also the maneuverability on this thing is kind of just way too fucking good, if you ask me. I don't know. Like you are getting down into, a normal like cruiser maneuverability. You're not quite, okay, to be fair, in Alaska, you're not quite at like a true cruiser maneuverability, but like you are getting close, right? Like your turning circle is well under 900. I think it's like 840, 850. We'll look at it in the port. But we forgot to look at the 65K in fires, right? 71K, like this is what I mean. So this game we got 100 and what is that? 36K, 137K in HE and 68K in AP. I'm like, the one salvo I misaimed or I misloaded HEM Worcester. So maybe we could bump this number up by like 5K for that. And then there's probably like maybe one salvo where I shot HE at a broadside battleship. But like even still, like I would argue that basically, I probably fired like 15 HE salvos and 5 AP salvos. Like, yeah, I would make a strong case that like probably at least 13 of those maybe 15ish HE salvos I fired were like the correct ammo choice. And that's what I mean, man. Like the it's so often the correct ammo choice in the HE on this thing. It's just like way too good. Especially with how many battleship monkeys don't take fire prevention. These guys just got like kind of shit on, right? I mean, like this Pommern dude. This Pommern, like, what did he do to me? 15K, and we did 71. The Worcester, I did a pretty good job of dodging his fire, right? But he does 14K, we do 33. The GNAN does 3,000, we do 12 and a half, right? The GK does 8K, we do 51. The Porter, like, I don't know. The ship is so consistent against so many ships. Like I said, kind of the only thing that like really, really fucks on you in the Alaska would be something like a Worcester or a GNAN, something with crazy fire starting. Des Moines in particular, or like a Hindenburg. Like this thing against a Hindenburg is a good night. You might as well just go back to port. You're gonna have to hide on a rock against something like a Hindenburg, a Henry, right? Because your deck is 36 in this thing. So any HE spammer with good fire starting and 36 plus millimeter HE pen just totally dumps on you in the Alaska. So you do have to watch out for that, right? You can't like totally disrespect every tier 10 cruiser in the game. But at tier 9, I don't know. You can disrespect so many ships in the Alaska. It's kind of crazy because, like, yeah, you're overmatchable. Like, if you're nose in, like GK, Iowa, Missouri, Satsuma, right? Like, a lot of their BBs overmatch this thing in a huge amount of its hull. But, like, you're going to have to deal with this thing, like, starting a fire on you every 20 seconds, right? Every like 16, 70 seconds, it pumps out like half a battleship salvo at you. It's just very difficult to deal with on Alaska. All right. I don't think there's going to be anything surprising in equipment. Slot 4 is probably the one true choice on Alaska. Like, you're going to want main armaments, right? There's no value to the improved DCP on a cruiser, really. I definitely think radar is the play. Because you will get I can't remember if I take it on the captain. I think I do. You can get the radar up to 46 seconds, which gives you a lot more wiggle room to get an extra salvo off. It's pretty common in this thing to, because remember, every time you are radaring a destroyer, if you take top grade gunner, which I think you should. I don't take that on every cruiser, but I do think you should. You're going to have a lower reload, right? So 46 seconds, if you've got your guns pre-aimed, like you know where the DD is, this can be just enough to shoot 4 times with vision. And if you don't run radar mod, you're never getting 4 shots off, right? So it can actually come in clutch to have that extra 5 seconds of radar. I do like taking this on Alaska. The ship is very positionally based. Prop mod's good, right? Prop mod's good on everything. But honestly, like, so is steering. Steering gears, there, yeah, 850 turning circle. So if you run steering gears, you're gonna get this down to like what 9.5 seconds or so. Is that right? No, like 10 and a half seconds, right? 20% reduction. Yeah. So you're actually gonna like turn a bit faster. Uh, but I would say if you're not sold on damage control system, prop mod is probably overall better because then you can wiggle back and forth on rocks a bit better. But I do like running DCS because then combined with just the one fire flag, you've got like kind of an okay fire duration, right? I think that gets you down to like 38 seconds or so per fire, which is way the fuck better than 60, obviously. And fires is like probably your biggest issue. And like I would say fire damage in Alaska usually in most games is more of a problem than getting overmatched. Uh, Captain wise, I think it's just a standard radar cruiser spec. You absolutely want shell feeder and I think turret traverse too because the reload is so comfy, right? I mean, we've got a 17.5 second reload, and this is with improved grease the gears. Without grease the gears, we're going to be rocking somewhere on like a 36-second reload. To me, that doesn't feel super great. I also don't really care about Last Stand in Alaska. Yeah, you can lose the engine, but like it's not a ship that mitigates damage by maneuverability typically. To me, it's fine not having last stand, but if you're not sold, then you can just drop grease the gears. I think top grade gunner is like a really good pick on Alaska, and I am a not a top grade gunner hater, but I do think it's like a very overhyped skill, right? Like I'll see people recommend top grade gunner on like Zao, and it's like what? Okay, all right. Um, so I do think on Alaska it's super good because again, this reload is being 17.6, right? So with top grade gunner active, you're at a 16-second reload, right? When you're just barely lower on HP, you can easily get like a 15-second reload with top grade gunner active on Alaska when you're like 2/3 HP. And going back to that radar duration, you fire at second 0, 15, 30, and 45. That's what I mean by you basically get 4 shots off. If you run the max radar spec and you take top grade gunner, then you very, very consistently, if you have guns pre aimed, can get 4 shots off with radar vision. And then if you either don't run top grade gunner or you don't run the radar module, you very, very rarely will get a fourth shot off with vision, right? So maybe like half the time you radar, you get 4 shots with this spec, and then if you drop top grade gunner or radar module, you're probably like realistically almost never getting that fourth shot off. So I actually think that's like a mega skill on Alaska. And of course, like the ship is good at close range, but like I think a good range to play this ship at is like that 14 to 17 kilometer mid range. Because if you play the closer you play to BBs, the more likely they are to experience a point and click adventure on your bow. But your concealment isn't amazing, but it's just that every time the radar is up, you're getting that, and the numbers are coinciding, right? Like if the Alaska had with reload mod a 20-second, like let's say this reload was 20 seconds with reload mod, I don't think I would recommend top grade gunner because you're never shooting more than 3 shots with radar. Like you're never getting a fourth shot off with radar vision. So, and given that I prefer to play the ship in like again like 14 to 17-ish kilometer range, I'd say I'm only utilizing top grade gunner when I'm radaring people a lot of the time, and then it wouldn't make you meet that threshold to squeeze off a fourth shot. Kind of just a preference thing. If you want to play Alaska a little farther back, then I would just swap this for the AA spec because 4-point AA skill on cruisers is like an absolute all-time skill. I really do think that, especially on utility cruisers. And then we can look at the armor. I mean, the armor's kind of shit. I mean, it's not like, I mean, compared to tier 9 cruisers, it's amazing. Don't get me wrong. But, so this is kind of the weakness here compared to Puerto Rico, like we said. Let's look at tier 9 and 10 U.S. cruisers. If we look at the Puerto Rico, yeah, so it's this part, right? You both have the same deck. 36 versus 38 is literally meaningless. I don't even know why Alaska's. Well, I guess it's historically accurate, whatever. So you both have the same 27 nose, right, on both of these ships, nose and ass 27. This is Puerto Rico's like one true advantage is 406s don't overmatch your upper belt. And on Alaska, 406s do in fact overmatch. I think the threshold is like 28.3 millimeters of armor or something for 406s. So that is a weakness that this thing has that you need to be aware of. But like the deck is still, it meets the same HE pen thresholds on this. I guess there's one difference, okay? I guess there's theoretically one difference. If the IJN gunboats run IFHE, they would pen 36 and they would not pen 38, right? I think I have that right because, yeah, I think they pen 37 if you run IFHE. So that is theoretically a very niche situation weakness. IHE Kita Harugamo Akazuki will kind of rape you in this thing because they pen every part of your boat. But they'll rape you with. I mean, these superstructures on both of these ships, right? We looked at Puerto Rico already. They're both big. Alaska is, maybe even marginally a little bit bigger. But that's the armor. But then if you strip away like the Citadel, it's actually a bit underwater. It's kind of hard to tell. There you go. You can kind of see the water line is right here, and the Citadel is here. So the Citadel is now it does have an overmatchable roof, right? And the overall side protection is not super high. The problem is that it's underwater. So like when you are perfectly flat broadside to people, especially at closer range, then the only way they can Citadel you, right? Because you're barely underwater, they're realistically never going to clip the roof again at close range, right? Once you get to longer and longer range, this Alaska Citadel is not troll anymore. Like you shoot this thing with a Montana at 20 kilometers and you might blow it the fuck up, right? Because the shells are arcing in a little bit. But at close range, the problem is like the only way to hit the Citadel is to hit water first. But then like if you hit water first, you're going to arm when you hit the water, right? Because every shell does. You're going to get slowed down by going through the torp belt. And then the armor is like fairly well spaced, right? So it's like, yeah, you can take a sit at point blank range, but it's kind of unlikely. But like we mentioned in ships like Colombo, Puerto Rico, and then we'll mention Alaska, when you turn in, right? So this is the enemy boat, okay? This little tugboat here, that's the enemy boat. And I'm going to turn in like this. I'm going to turn in like this. Because of the way you drift and your momentum, what happens is you roll the side of the hull that faces the enemy ship up out of the water. So turning out does the opposite thing. If you turn out, you roll it up. And so on Alaska, you kind of get fucked in both ways because the deck on the Citadel is overmatchable. So if you turn out, you're partially raising the roof on the far side of the Citadel, so shells coming in just above the water can now have a chance to clip and go into the Citadel. But realistically, it's that turning in that is nightmare, because this part of the hull will roll out of the water like a solid 1 or 2 meters, and this will go from an underwater Citadel to like a noticeably above water Citadel, and you go from taking 25k in pens and overpens to you blow the fuck up. So you don't want to do that. But I would say that the Alaska is just 100% the most worth Black Friday ship. Because, and I'm not going to probably look at, maybe we'll look at some more of the tier 8 Black Friday ships, right? But there's quite a few ships in the Black Friday event that you can just get right now for doubloons or coal, right? So it's like, yeah, you can spend doubloons to get the black B, but you can also spend coal to get the black, right? You can, I think even like Cossack is available. No, Cossack is a tier 8, so you can't. No, you can't. No, you have to spend doubloons, right? Isn't that how it works? All tier 8 premiums are doubloons, yeah. But you know what I mean? Like a Togo, you can get them for doubloons now. That's the point I was trying to make. So the Black Friday event, I guess you get like the one coupon you can use maybe, but I think this is still the ship. It's kind of the three ships in the Black Friday event are like the Alaska, the Massachusetts, and the Jean Bart are kind of the 3 ships everyone talks about. I think tier for tier, like unquestionably the Alaska is the best of those ships. It's really, really good. And it's also really, really good in all game modes. Like, it's really good in ranked. handful of times they've let you play a tier 9 in clan battles, the Alaska is still good. It's really good in randoms, right? Jean Bard is kind of like an exclusive randoms warrior. Um, and Massachusetts is like way better in ranked. Massachusetts is kind of like a bit more dubious in randoms because the gun performance is kind of shit. But it's still good ship in randoms. But the Alaska is like probably just the best tier 9 cruiser in ranked and in randoms. I mean, it's hard to pick one. You have some specialist ships like Schroeder and Michelangelo that like are solid in ranked, but they're dog shit in randoms, right? And the Alaska is like god tier in randoms and god tier in ranked, and it doesn't really care if it's up tier. Like, I don't give a fuck. There's super ships in my game. So fucking what? More damage, baby. More XP. Let's go. Right? There's not that many ships that can claim that in Alaska, especially cruisers. There's no cruiser that doesn't care if it's up tiered. Maybe Riga because it has armor, but Alaska does not give a fuck if it's up tiered. It's like if there's one ship to buy for doubloons on Black Friday, like to me it's the Alaska, unless you just hate cruisers. But yep, straight up overpowered. This thing is just a tier 10 in a tier 9 slot. Good in all game modes. 100% worth getting if you're the kind of player who spends money on this game. That'll do it. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.